Hello everyone, and this is Dustin Benzel, and welcome to another episode of Pokemon Journeys. In this particular episode, we are going to discuss Ash versus Cynthia. So you're probably wondering, there's been 2 episodes prior, why haven't you been uploading videos? I've been dealing with a lot of personal things, and then I ultimately decided that I was just going to do one video talking about the whole of Ash versus Cynthia instead of going through my thoughts of each particular episode. Why not discuss the episode or the battle as a whole? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go over everything that happened as much as we can, and this may or may not be a long video. We'll just have to wait and see. So the battle begins with Spiritomb versus Dragonite, and the one thing about Spiritomb is that it has Hypnosis, Sucker Punch, and Dream Eater, as well as a move that will come play later on in this particular discussion. And unfortunately, Dragonite does not do very well. It falls asleep after taking a Sucker Punch, and then it gets hit 3 times with Dream Eater and then gets fainted. Now, I will discuss this a little bit later, but yeah, it is unfortunate that that's what happened. But I guess it was Ash's fault for trying to trust that Dragonite was just going to wake up, which is very unfortunate, but we'll discuss it in a little bit. Next, we have Rosemary versus Gengar, which is Gengar Will-O-Wisping Rosemary and doing some damage, I guess, a little bit. And unfortunately, Rosemary, later on, we find out it has natural cure, so Gengar basically didn't do anything. Then we have Spiritomb versus Gengar. And here we have Dazzling Gleam versus Sucker Punch. Gengar gets up, but then immediately faints, and Spiritomb takes a win. Now, this is where we get some controversy and issues that I have with the battle, although there will be more issues later on. One of the things that we need to discuss is the controversy of Gengar getting up and seemingly being fine and then fainting. If you remember, this also happened against Volkner when it got up after getting hit with Rotom and then it fell. Now, a lot of people are like, why does it do that? If there's no point in it, why doesn't it just fall? I hate to say this, but you're not looking at it in the correct way. Yes, it may be ridiculous that Gengar comes up and is fine and then falls over. But I think what you're not understanding is that I think that's part of Gengar's character. Gengar does not want to disappoint Ash. Gengar does not want to lose. Gengar pushes and gets up, and it seemingly is fine through all of that tension. But when Gengar releases that tension, that fighting urge, Gengar just comes to its injuries and faints. So I think it's just a testament to Gengar's character that it can stay conscious with that willpower, but when it thinks it's fine, it releases that willpower and then it just faints. I think that's the point. I don't think they're just trying to add tension or anything. I just think it's part of Gengar's character to not want to disappoint Ash and wants to be there, but basically lowers its guard. And by lowering its guard and losing some of that willpower that it had to getting up, I think it just faints. I think that's just what it is. Also, in regards to the issues here, yes, Dragonite and Gengar lost without getting any wins, and that's just how Spiritomb was treated. Giving it 2 wins and everything. And I get that people are upset with that. I am as well, but no matter what, as I've already said in quite a few other videos, someone is getting screwed over. And in this battle, it was Gengar and Dragonite, and in Ash versus Steven, it was, of course, Dracovish that didn't get a win. So, yeah, it's just something that's going to happen. I fully expect it to happen against Leon, and I may make jokes later on, but if it's going to go down to the wire, I'm expecting Pokemon to not do very well, and I'll discuss that later on with my thoughts and opinions on Ash versus Leon. So anyway, next we have Togekiss versus Pikachu, where we learn that Togekiss has Serene Grace, and it flinches Pikachu, but then one of the elements of the battle that makes Cynthia so strong is that she does switch out a lot. And, it is weird because Ash does switch out. Ash switched out pretty much a lot versus his battle against Volkner. So it's kind of weird that Ash is relying heavily on his Pokemon and not switching out. Like, I don't think Ash has ever switched out any Pokemon. And of course, one of them is because they didn't want to be switched out, which is in the next part. But we're not quite done with this first part, the first episode. So Togekiss Pikachu goes back and forth, and then Togekiss is recalled. Cynthia sends out Gastrodon. Pikachu uses its cool strategy of knocking Stone Edge rocks onto Gastrodon, blocking it from moving, and then uses a quick attack. And a lot of people have a problem with this, and it's simply that Pikachu knocked out Gastrodon without really much effort, because one quick attack and a two slams of return Stone Edge really shouldn't knock it out. But of course, how else do you explain other situations like this where a champion's Pokemon knocks out another champion's Pokemon with one hit? You know, I like it. It is ridiculous no matter how you look at it, and it is what it is. I wish Pikachu had a much better moveset to deal with the water ground type, but he doesn't. It only has Iron Tail, and it only has Quick Attack. So then we move into Spirit Tomb versus Pikachu, and this is where we get a cool callback to Counter Shield, and Pikachu uses Counter Shield to block Hypnosis. Good thing that Ash remembered that, because the whole entire point of Counter Shield in the very beginning was to block Fantina's Hypnosis with her Drifblim. So it's a really, really cool callback, and Pikachu blocking that Hypnosis, and then Cynthia remembering, oh yeah, I remember that in the Sinnoh League because it was used with Weasel, and of course, technically Paul's Gastrodon. Paul did some form of Counter Shield. And then of course, Pikachu does very well, does an Electro Web, and seemingly does an Iron Tail to finish the job. But what we learn here at this point, right before that happened, Cynthia commanded Spirit Tomb to really kind of do something like, Spirit Tomb, get ready, or something, which is code for what Spirit Tomb needs to do. So Pikachu uses Iron Tail. Spirit Tomb's Keystone, Odd Keystone, doesn't seem to be moving for a while, which I think confuses the referee a little bit, because the referee is supposed to know exactly when a Pokemon is knocked out or whatever. And then all of a sudden a Dark Aura comes and attacks Pikachu and knocks out Pikachu. And that is, of course, Destiny Bond. Now, of course, I immediately made that connection because of what, like, Spirit Tomb did some sort of like Shadow Ball thing, and then it just like disappeared. And the fact that it was so long for the referee to say that Spirit Tomb is knocked out meant that something was wrong. And I was like, and I was trying to figure it out. And then when that aura came out, it finally clicked that was Destiny Bond, you know? And I don't know the Japanese name really. I mean, I guess it's translated to Dragalong or whatever, but I don't know the Japanese words that mean Dragalong. So it's not like they said Destiny Bond or whatever, you know? So it like, I did think it was Destiny Bond because you know, the thing that got my attention was that this matchup was revealed in the special preview between Ash versus Cynthia. We knew Pikachu and Spirit Tomb were going to knock out. So I was confused at first. I was like, I distinctively remember Pikachu and Spirit Tomb both knocking each other out in a double knockout. So I couldn't understand why Pikachu seemingly won. And then it just clicked. Oh, the only way that could happen was with Destiny Bond. So Spirit Tomb takes out 3 of Ash's Pokemon. Ash has 3 Pokemon left, and Cynthia has 4. It is insane how that first episode was. But yeah, like I said, I had issues with Dragonite and Gengar, but hopefully they'll make it up versus Leon if, you know, Tomioka actually cares at all about Ash's Pokemon and what they take out and when. Because it's going to really suck if Dragonite finishes Journeys without getting another win. I don't care if it's against Rillaboom, it should get a win, but we'll talk about that at the end of this particular discussion. So anyway, the next episode starts with Roserade versus Dracovish. We find out that Roserade, of course, has natural cure. Dracovish and Roserade fight each other. Dracovish gets poisoned and knocks out Roserade with a Dragon Rush, which was really cool. Not exactly the most impressive win, but it is Cynthia's Roserade, and it got a really nice win. And it is neutral damage to grass types just as much as, dragon moves, and then Ice Fang is effective, but it didn't use it. Uses Fishious Rend, which isn't very effective against Roserade, but, whatever. So then after the battle, Ash tries to recall Dracovish, which, oh, by the way, Dracovish got mad that it got poisoned, and it was very determined to knock out Roserade. Then we also had another moment where Ash tries to recall Dracovish because it is poisoned, but Dracovish says, no, I still want to battle, which then leads to Milotic versus Dracovish. And Dracovish does very well, but at this particular point, it is knocked out. The Dragon Rush that it tries to do doesn't work, but what we see later on after the match is concluded, Dracovish actually did bite the back of Milotic's head or neck or whatever, like the back neck part of it, and did a nice Fishious Rend, which then Sirfetch'd comes out, which, by the way, Garchomp does come out versus Dracovish. I forgot that matchup, and all it basically did was just knock Dracovish with Dragon Claw and then set up a Stealth Rock, which then cuts to Sirfetch'd versus Milotic, where Sirfetch'd comes out hit with Stealth Rock, and then Ash uses Brutal Swing with Sirfetch'd's shield and knocks out all of the stones, and therefore Stealth Rock is an issue. I do have to say I'm not necessarily a fan of Sirfetch'd's moveset outside of Detect and Meteor Assault. I really wish it still had Night Slash, and I wish Fury Cutter was better, but it is what it is. So then it's Sirfetch'd versus Milotic, and then Sirfetch'd's Meteor Assault does enough damage to knock out Milotic. Then Cynthia sends out Garchomp, and then of course we have this nice clash between each other. Sirfetch'd uses another Meteor Assault, and it almost looks like Garchomp gets knocked out. Like, I was a little concerned when I saw Garchomp staggering after that Meteor Assault, because I'm like, I vaguely remembered that it was spoiled in that special preview that Lucario and Garchomp were going to be the last Pokemon standing. So what is happening here? And as it turned out, Garchomp is okay, but Sirfetch'd gets knocked out. In kind of a cool way, Sirfetch'd got itself knocked out while standing up. Like, it passed out standing up, which was really cool. And so that was that battle. And of course, then it leads to Togekiss versus Lucario, which is Ash's final Pokemon. And of course, it's like back and forth, We kind of get a callback to Togekiss having Serene Grace and whether or not Lucario is flinched or not. It's kind of weird because Lucario's abilities would kind of prevent it from being flinched. Well, at least if it had Steadfast, its speed would increase. But Inner Focus would prevent it being flinched, but it really wasn't really brought up, except unless you get the game distribution of Lucario, where Inner Focus is its ability or whatever. And then the one thing that's disappointing is Sirfetch'd apparently has Steadfast. I would have preferred Ash's Sirfetch'd having Scrappy so that it can attack fighting type or ghost types with its fighting type moves, which would have been nice. And Sirfetch'd has Scrappy, so I was kind of disappointed that was the case. Which, by the way, the distribution seemed to confirm that Ash's Dragonite is female, which is what a lot of fans have been hoping for, as such myself, and I'm glad that Dragonite is seemingly female like I think it is, or that we've all been thinking, so that's a really nice touch. But it is games. It hasn't quite been confirmed in the anime, but it is what it is. So anyway, Togekiss and Lucario go back and forth, bullet punch, it goes back and forth, and then of course we get to a point where then all of a sudden Cynthia recalls Togekiss and then Dynamaxes. And there's a lot of problems that I have with it. For one thing, she didn't use Mega Garchomp, and I feel like it was a cheap cop out. I mean, for strategy purposes, it probably did make sense, even though I'm not exactly too confident on that. I don't know. A lot of people are saying that Garchomp was too weakened or whatever, and it's I'm pretty sure Mega Garchomp would have given it a second wind and it would have been a lot stronger. But I guess they wanted to make it believable, so they just Dynamaxed Togekiss. And we'll talk about some of it in the next part in a moment or whatever. So that was pretty much the episode. So the next part starts with Dynamax Togekiss, then of course Ash Mega evolves his Lucario. And then of course the thing that a lot of people have issues with, I kind of have an issue with it, but it kind of makes sense, is that Cynthia uses Max Airstream 3 times against Lucario. The first one, Lucario goes through, uses Aura Sphere, but Togekiss is good enough to destroy the Aura Sphere, swat it basically, and destroy the Aura Sphere. The next Max Airstream, Lucario dodges and does massive damage with Bullet Punch, which is super effective against Togekiss. The third one, Mega Lucario sits there and uses its massive Dynamax Aura Sphere ability and then just launches it towards Togekiss, and through that connection of like bond phenomenon, or rather bond aura or whatever, it just managed to hit Togekiss, and that's the end of Togekiss. And of course, during this, Max Airstream raises Togekiss's speed 3 times, which was the whole entire point, which causes Togekiss to go really fast or whatever, but ultimately a Bullet Punch manages to defeat Togekiss. Now, a lot of people were like, it is a little rough that it used Max Airstream 3 times to raise its speed, but I do ultimately think it was just to weaken Lucario so that her regular Garchomp could have defeated Lucario. But, we'll talk about that in a moment. But yeah, it is weird that that's how it goes. Like, people are like, it was a waste or whatever. But you have to realize that I'm sure champions can make mistakes. Like, they don't make mistakes, but I do think they have the possibility to misunderstand their Pokemon. I think Cynthia was banking on Togekiss being good enough to stop Lucario or to damage enough so Garchomp could take over. And that could have been a mistake on Cynthia. And I think it does make sense that she would make that mistake to maybe use Dynamax over Mega because she wanted to really do a lot of damage to Lucario enough to make a difference. But I just think she just underestimated Ash's bond with Lucario, which is something that I don't think champions could have that special extrasensory perception to understand. So while I do think it's ridiculous that the writers had Cynthia using Dynamax Togekiss, I would have definitely preferred Mega Garchomp. I just don't think that she was really expecting Ash to do so well with Lucario. Also, something that just came to my mind is that earlier before the battle, Cynthia mentions that she's going to retire, and then I'll mention that in a minute later on in this particular video. So now we have Garchomp versus Mega Lucario. It basically, we get a little bit more backstory with Cynthia and Garchomp. Gibble, Gabite, Garchomp. We see her catching a Feebas, which is probably what ends up being her Milotic or whatever. So we get a really nice callback to Cynthia's flashback to her past, which was really nice and really enjoyable. And then, of course, it was Garchomp versus Mega Lucario. Scale Shot versus Bullet Punch, and then Aura Sphere. A lot of people have a problem with Scale Shot being used because it's supposed to increase Garchomp's speed while lowering its defense. But one thing that I will have to say, those particular move effects, the only reason that they would focus on that if that is the point of the battle. What I'm saying is Garchomp has had Scale Shot this entire time during Journeys when Cynthia first appeared in Journeys. However, the thing that's important is that Scale Shot's effect has never been mentioned before. So having it casually being mentioned here, raising Garchomp's speed, I don't think it really matters. I don't think Garchomp raising its speed is going to somehow make it faster than Lucario can handle or whatever. And I don't necessarily think that was the point. So then it was Lucario versus Garchomp, Bullet Punch versus Dragon Claw, and they're just like beating each other, doing a lot of damage and going down to the wire. And then, of course, they like separate, and then Lucario falls to its knees, and Cynthia's like, I'm going to take advantage of that. Dragon Claw. And then Ash does the thing that was really surprising and very smart. He has Lucario using Reversal. I don't like that it necessarily has Reversal or even Double Team, but I definitely appreciate this moment because it was a very good play by Ash. It's very similar to like countering Gladion's counter in the Alola League, but this is even better because it actually is something that makes sense because Lucario is low health, about to faint, taking all of that damage and hitting with the most powerful amount of damage against Garchomp was really smart by Ash, and I absolutely appreciate it. And then, of course, we get like them both knocking out. But the important thing is Maggie Lucario does not lose its form. Then after a while, Lucario stands up. And then, of course, Garchomp is declared the loser. Ash wins the battle. Ash has finally defeated Cynthia after so long. Even though this is technically their... I'm pretty sure this is the first battle that they've ever had, which I feel like is a missed opportunity. Unless I'm missing some practice battle that I don't quite remember happening, but this is basically the first time that they've really had a battle, and then Ash defeats Cynthia, which is really cool. I love Cynthia. I'm okay with her losing. I still think she's better than Leon by far, but that's just my opinion. So let's go over a little bit more. Okay, so Cynthia decides that she's going to withdraw her retirement from battles. She wants to continue battling, which is really nice. And the one thing that I will have to say in regards to this battle, if I can quickly remember it, let's see. There was a severe lack of cameos. The only thing that we really got was Diantha talking with Leon in the back rooms, Hop and Go talking to each other. Team Rocket was there, of course, discussing. And then it cut to Oak and his Pokemon with Tracy, Delia, and whatever. And that's fine, but I'm really disappointed that there weren't more cameos for Ash's battle, like in the beginning. And I don't know why they fell through on that. Because in the previous battle, Ash versus Steven, I really think it would have been better if they actually showed the Alola gang when Ash was using a Z move. Like just a quick shot of them watching on TV in class or even in a stadium or whatever, and then cheering Ash on with the Z move and he wins or whatever. I think that would have been nice. Just like in here, I feel like we should have saw a little bit more cameos going on, given that this was such an important battle between Ash versus Cynthia. I'm really hoping that they really make this up later on versus Ash versus Leon, but we'll just have to wait and see. So far, this is my favorite battle of Journey so far, and of course it was going to be, even with the issues that I have with it. Best Journeys battle. I know that may not mean much, but I really enjoyed this battle. So next is Ash versus Leon in the finals. And, you know, I made a joke on Twitter that, so Alon defeats one of Leon's Pokemon. Diantha defeats 2 of Leon's Pokemon. I guess we should expect Ash to defeat 3 of Leon's Pokemon. But I don't know. I feel like it's going to be more closer together just because of plot reasons. I know I don't necessarily like it. I don't like the way that Leon was treated. As I'm pretty sure I made an episode, Leon versus Diantha was the worst garbage that I've ever seen in Journeys. And it just wasn't right that Leon was that unbeatable. But we all know Ash and Leon are going to come down to the wire. Or at least Ash is going to defeat 4 of Leon's Pokemon. I don't know how it's going to go, but it's going to be stupid regardless. So my hope is that Dragonite, Pikachu, Gengar, and Lucario at least get all wins against Leon's Pokemon. I don't care if it's just one Pokemon. And I'm also hoping that Ash actually defeats Charizard while Leon has other Pokemon waiting that hasn't been released. I want Leon to rely on Charizard so much that he underestimates Ash and his bond with this Pokemon, so they end up knocking his Charizard out, and then Leon wins with his other Pokemon, which I think would be a really nice touch, that Ash was able to defeat Leon's Charizard, but Leon still won with his other Pokemon, which I think would be a really nice touch, and conclude the rivalry if Ash is going to lose. Or tie, or win. I don't know what's going to happen. We're just going to have to wait and see. There's just not a lot of episodes, and I just don't know how they're going to format this later on. Speaking of which, what was I going to say? Like, the Pokemon that I really don't care getting wins against Leon is, of course, Dracofish, as well as Surfetch. I think they can be fodder. A lot of people are saying that Lucario should be fodder, and I think that's just a little unfair. I'm not happy with the way that Dragonite was treated, and it's because fans have been crying for Dragonite to get a loss for some reason. I don't get it. The obsession with them getting a loss doesn't make any sense to me. In a perfect world, everyone would get a win, but we don't live in a perfect world. Someone is getting screwed over because I have a pretty good idea that Ash is going to lose against Leon. So someone is getting screwed over because Ash has 6 Pokemon. The only way they can all get wins is if Ash wins the battle. So he has to only be able to defeat 5 Pokemon, which means someone is getting screwed over without a win if Ash loses. Or maybe it's a tie and Pikachu and Charizard tie, or whatever the circumstances. One more thing I would like to add before I end this particular video is... Oh, yeah. What I was going to say is the thing that is kind of disappointing to me is that Ash is probably going to use Gigantamax Gengar against Leon and not a Z move or a Mega Evolution. And I don't know if I'm going to be entirely satisfied against that. I feel like they would try and make Leon's battle more epic, but who knows? Maybe Ash is allowed to use one of each, or maybe he's allowed to use 2 for the finals. You know, maybe Leon has like a Mega Evolution or whatever, and we'll use Dynamax or Gigantamax, and we'll see that in the battle, and then Ash will use Mega or Gigantamax Gengar, and maybe he'll use the Z move. That is unfortunate that that's probably going to happen, that it's just going to be Gigantamax Gengar. But it is what it is. Hopefully Gengar will actually take a win or whatever. But I doubt it's just going to be Gengar versus the final Pokemon. But we'll just have to wait and see what's going to happen. But yeah, it is looking like Ash is going to use Gigantamax against Leon. And I'm not exactly a fan of that. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens then. So that's this particular discussion, Ash versus Cynthia, and my thoughts of Ash versus Leon. Coming up is a recap of Go and some Go episodes, which I'm not really a fan of, but I do think they just want to end with Ash versus Leon and some sort of final episode to conclude Journeys before the 9th generation anime comes along, which I don't know what it's going to be. The way that there's not that many episodes left, and the way they probably would just cut to having a 9th generation anime seems to indicate that Ash probably will go into the 9th generation anime, because I don't know how they conclude Ash's journey in the anime as it is, even if he wins, if he's not going to continue. But we'll just have to wait and see what's going on. Maybe we'll get like some sort of preview or something coming along the lines later on. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.